Good evening and welcome to Political Truth Daily. I'm your host, and today we're breaking down a major developing story that's dominating headlines. President Trump's deployment of over 1,100 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. from 6 Republican-led states. While politicians on both sides are spinning this story, I'm going to give you the verified facts, the real numbers, and the context you need to understand what's actually happening in our nation's capital. Let's start with what we know for certain. As of today, 6 Republican governors have committed to sending National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. as part of President Trump's crime crackdown initiative. Here are the exact numbers from official state announcements. West Virginia is leading with 300 to 400 troops, and they've already begun arriving. Louisiana has approved 135 National Guard members. Mississippi is sending approximately 200 troops. Tennessee is deploying roughly 160 Guard members this week. South Carolina has authorized 200 troops, and Ohio will contribute 150. That's a total of over 1,100 additional troops joining the existing D.C. National Guard force of 2,400 personnel. But here's the first key fact that's being misreported. These troops are not patrolling D.C. streets with weapons. According to Pentagon officials, they're stationed at 10 metro rail stations and are not currently authorized to carry firearms. Now, let's talk about the politics behind this deployment, because that's where the real story gets interesting. President Trump has repeatedly complained about rising crime in D.C. and has framed this as a necessary security measure. But here's what the actual crime statistics show. Overall crime in Washington, D.C. is down this year compared to 2024. D.C.'s Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser had a telling response when asked about the additional troops. She said, quote, "We don't have any authority over the D.C. Guard or any other guards," and then added, "But I think it kind of makes the point that this is not about D.C. crime." That's a significant statement from the city's chief executive, essentially arguing that if crime is actually decreasing, then this deployment serves a different purpose. The political divide became even clearer when Vermont's Republican Governor Phil Scott refused to send troops. His office released a statement saying, quote, "The governor is opposed to utilizing the National Guard for this purpose and does not view the enforcement of domestic law as proper use of the National Guard." So we have Republican governors on both sides of this issue, some supporting the deployment, others questioning whether it's appropriate. This brings us to the deeper constitutional and legal questions that this deployment raises. The president has unique authority over the D.C. National Guard, unlike state National Guards, which are typically controlled by governors. This means Trump can deploy federal troops in the nation's capital without the usual checks and balances that exist in states. But the broader question is about precedent. What does it mean when a president can mobilize over 1,000 troops from supportive states to operate in areas controlled by political opponents? According to Just Security, there are already legal challenges being prepared. The concern isn't just about this specific deployment, but about what future presidents might do with this precedent. The chair of the Democratic Governors Association, Kansas Governor Laura Kelly, issued a statement saying, quote, "I implore my colleagues from Ohio, West Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, and every other state to reject the temptation to use their soldiers to reinforce a dangerous, politically motivated agenda." Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defended the operation, highlighting 52 arrests on Tuesday night, though that's actually similar to the average number of daily arrests in D.C. throughout 2024. So what should we make of all this? First, the immediate facts. Over 1,000 additional National Guard troops are being deployed to D.C. metro stations. They're not armed, they're not doing street patrols, and they're not operating in what would traditionally be considered high-crime areas. Second, the political reality. This is as much about demonstrating federal authority as it is about addressing crime, especially given that D.C. crime statistics are actually improving. Third, the constitutional concern. This sets a precedent for how federal power can be projected in areas controlled by political opposition, and that has implications far beyond D.C. The question isn't whether these troops will prevent crime, it's whether this type of deployment becomes a normal tool of presidential power. Here's my bottom line: stay informed, read the actual numbers, and think about the precedents being set. Whether you support or oppose this deployment, the constitutional questions it raises will outlast any single administration. This has been Political Truth Daily. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for daily political analysis based on facts, not spin. And remember, in politics, the real story is often in what they're not telling you.